My job is to stand in front of you today to talk about the journey of Sikh Women's Aid and how we came to be. Now, for me personally, the journey starts with the founding fathers of the Sikh faith, our gurus. It is under their wisdom and guidance that is found in our scripture, in our history, and in our codes of conduct that gave us the strength to push forward with publicising this report. Because in the words of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the truth is the highest, but higher still is truthful living. And for me, truthful living means owning the truth, no matter how scary it might be, no matter how ugly it might be, and no matter what potential backlash there could be. Now, I love my community. It's one of the most generous, giving, caring out there. Whether we look back to the contributions in the First and Second World War, whether we're out feeding the homeless, dropping off nurses to their hospital shifts during COVID-19, we're always at the forefront of it all. We are a sacrificing, respected community that has garnered honour and respect here in the UK over decades. But we also need to get comfortable with the fact that this veneer of civility and respect for some has become a smokescreen to cover the more darker aspects of the community and toxic behaviours around domestic and sexual violence. We can absolutely recognise that we are a great community, just like every other community, but just like every other community, we have bad apples. And we need to acknowledge that, and we need to accept that. Now, this will be difficult, we understand that, but there is simply no place for abuse of women and girls in any society, especially one as ours that is rooted in gender equality and respect since its inception. So the journey to become Sikh Women's Aid, more specifically, I would say, has been quite a unique journey. We launched the organisation in May 2021 of this year, but the executive team and our individual journeys in various parts of the DV and Vogue sector spans a collective of 40 years. Whether that be refuge provision, supporting victims of child sexual exploitation across multiple settings, including faith settings, listening to family members and friends over the years, and for some of us, our own experiences. When it comes to our women, there has been untold suffering taking place. We argue that it is still taking place. Our findings presented in our report today evidence this. During my time as CSE lead and chair of the executive board of the Sikh Women's Action Network, our team witnessed a crisis emerging from within the four walls of our own community. And this was happening during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Now, this ranged from women in their 60s who'd reached breaking point, 40 years of being married to an abuser, having your children married off and being stuck in four walls with someone who had abused them for over 40 years, were phoning us saying, "We've had enough. We can't cope anymore. The silence is too much." Then we have women who have been brought from India to marry someone's affluent and influential son, only to be beaten, raped, mentally abused to the point of suicide. Right down to young girls, no older than 21, being forced to marry strangers abroad and to continue their lives in that way. We need to acknowledge this. We have no shame in acknowledging this. It is happening. And to bring about change, to bring about positive change and a brighter future for our coming generations, we need to start from this point of acceptance and acknowledgement, because from there we can move forward with honesty and integrity. So sadly, when the co-directors of the Sikh Women's Action Network decided to close down their organisation, we as its executive board were very anxious. What's going to happen to all those women who were finally reaching out? Because I think COVID just brought a point where we've had enough. Whether it was the 60-year-old woman, the 21-year-old girl, the woman who was just, Jalaho, let it be, Jalaho, it's not working anymore. And unless we do something, this crisis will only worsen. So the four founding members today came together and we decided to launch a service to ensure that the victims from the Sikh Punjabi community had culturally sensitive support. And from this, Sikh Women's Aid was born. Our first step in this journey was acknowledging that there was gaps in data from the Sikh Punjabi community. So initially, for our own frame of reference, we launched a survey in the summer of 2021 that targeted the Sikh Punjabi community in the UK over the age of 16. We sought creative ways to engage with our community. Being grassroots, we know WhatsApp is one of the biggest things. So distribution and circulation of our survey was done in 3 phases. Now, we were so blessed that we had the steering committee who are all dotted around here. You all know who you are and you've been absolutely amazing. So this ranges from city professionals, teachers, mental health professionals, wedding planners, makeup artists, henna tattoo artists. They all came together and within their own extended social networks, we blasted the survey across WhatsApp. And within 72 hours, we had 350 responses. That was before we even hit the survey onto social media. Then the second phase was hitting social media and building our following and getting responses that way. The third phase was reaching out to our partner organisations in the DV and VOG sector. Where we closed the survey, although we weren't surprised, we were actually startled at the numbers and what we were seeing, because this was now alluding to an abuse crisis within our community. And it took us a few days to process this information. Should we put it out? Should we do anything with this? Should we just keep this internal and just build our services? But then where does the change happen? Because the change has to happen here, in people's hearts and minds. And we have to have those difficult conversations. Even having this conversation with you now, my hands are shaking, feeling a bit of anxiety in my pit, because I'm thinking, there's going to probably be some people who are thinking, shut up, be quiet, don't be talking about this. But we are so grateful that the majority of our community have been absolutely supportive. They have rallied around us. And yes, like any other community, you will have the little fringe section that will want to shut it down. But thankfully, like all other communities, they are a minority. I have faith and respect in my community that they will welcome and respect our findings for what they are. A first step in a journey of learning. We have provided the first step. We are saying that there is a problem. We are not just saying it, we are evidencing it. Sorry, it's a bit emotional. So why did we produce this report? I want to go back to the beginning of my speech here and refer to those calls that we were getting over COVID. Now, being chair of an executive board, I don't really do frontline. But we were so inundated, I was taking calls, and some of the stories I heard will stay with me. There's simply no place for this anywhere, especially not in our community. It's time to shatter the silence around this once and for all. We cannot continue as we are. We cannot bear to see our next generation of mothers, sisters, daughters silently suffering, or perpetrators are allowed to thrive, whether that's through honour-based violence and silencing, shame and suppression, or the lack of support in getting convictions against perpetrators. There is a perfect storm from both within the community and within the wider sector and policing, where victims will not go to the police. I've spoken to women imploring them to report. What's the point? They're not going to believe me. I've got no evidence. And when you've got coercive control, mental abuse, how do you evidence that? How do you evidence that my husband's been swearing at me for the last 15 years and now I'm too scared to leave the house? There's some things that can't be evidenced, but they are most certainly felt. We need to recognise that somewhere along the line, as a community, there is a demographic that places little to no value on the lives of its women. That somewhere along the line, we turned away from the teachings of our faith, which clearly and categorically honours the role of women in society and actively shunned those who caused harm to their mothers, sisters and daughters. Today, that silence has been shattered. And going forward, we can take 2 paths. One, we come together as a community and sector, take ownership of this problem, take ownership that our women are suffering, and work together to rebuild their trust to rebuild their faith in us, to rebuild their faith in a community that is rooted in gender equality, or we can shun today's findings and carry on as we are. I would like to make one thing clear. Carrying on as we are is not an option for us. Sikh Women's Aid will not allow things to continue as they are. We have a long road ahead of us, there is no doubt about that. But you know what, we're ready. Sikh Women's Aid is starting from the bottom up. We have devised a 10-year strategy that we will bring into existence via our holistic, trauma-informed support services so that a victim has options and choices to live the best life she can possibly have. The days of ik jop so suk, aka shut up and put up, will come to an end. Sikh Women's Aid's mission is to actively challenge these harmful belief systems and practices that act as the root cause to all forms of abuse within the Sikh Punjabi community, but we cannot do it alone. We need your support, and I believe with that support we can come together and start healing and growing and really earning the respect back of our women and our sisters and our daughters. And on my behalf, I want to offer an apology to the generations that we have lost. There's one comment over the last few weeks that I saw on social media from a young girl who said the best thing I ever did was walk away from this toxic community. And to you, and to any other women who felt that they had to do that, we're sorry. We're sorry we've let you down. We're sorry we didn't do better by you. But by God, we will do better by you going forward. Thank you.